से कोई BEGC 106 का पॉपुलर लिटरेचर की मखा ताबो इना ब्लॉक 1 पॉपुलर लिटरेचर एंड इंट्रोडक्शन का इंट्रोडक्शन की सेक्शन नंबर दुई सब सेक्शन नंबर है बताए का अदुगा ngasi की यूनिट से ना यूनिट नंबर 3 कोई 1 2 का कोई निनग्रे का ngasi यूनिट से ना यूनिट नंबर 3 exploring academic and critical approaches to popular literature अपुना popular literature जे स्टडी तो बकांदा नत्रगा अपुना कुपना यंग बकांदा को academic impact है बता रहे academia दा पुसलागा ना कमाइना स्टडी तो भी है अमसुम critical theories कुम बका for example structuralism postmodernism कुम पुसलागा मोइजे post modernism कुम जे हाचल लगा है बता रहे को कोई popular literature जे करम बिगिंग दगी स्टडी तो भी आगे है बतो कोई ngasi की lecture जी दा कोई निना गदो रिम ने बका so ngasi की जे BEGC 106 popular literature block 1 popular literature and introduction to की section नंबर नी अदुगा यूनिट ना यूनिट नंबर 3 अखोई की जे यूनिट मरी ना कोई की ब्लॉक में साथनी को ngasi की जिना कोई थर्ड सुपर लेक्चर होइदनी लेक्चर ममिंग जिना exploring academic and critical approaches to popular literature और जिको दोइदा objectives this unit provides account of many critical approaches that have been used to study popular literature as soon as the term popular is mentioned it triggers several connotations meant for masses accessible to a large denomination of people aduna ekoina popular literature natraga popular haiba wahi je tabu kanda koi the connotation haiba link ama haiba tare ko koi the preconception haiba nei re ko ama kari lege haiba kanda mayam gi damak masses gi damak ko koi gi for a large section of the society haigera for a large section of the people haigera or population haigera ko mayam na accessible hoiba mayam na pabi aba mayam na enjoy to aba haiba tare aduga moise in most of traditional literary criticism, popular literature has been relegated to the margins, not considered worthy of serious study or analysis. Adubu equiki analytical as well as academia da pusula bukanda. Natraga traditional literary criticism bumato bukanda di popular literature je margins da haibati nakanda haibatar ko periphery da oina inthoga thambagi culture ama akoina notice to bungami we throughout the history ko moigi akoina popular literature ki history magi growth kum jing bakanda popular literature hairagati khara hanthaba thaki haba tare ko khara mass enjoyment ki odai di classical quality chain daba odagi di time gi matamna impact yam laina to haba tare habadi matam amagi popular literature je matam amada impactful hoida bi ko adumaina lobuju yaba aduna akoi gi popular literature hairaga akoina negative connotation kara akoina thingnabo akoi thingnabo ngami haiba tare ko adugi wanita the binary between high and low art has informed much of the earlier approach to popular literature and popular culture at large ona binary relationship haiba tare ko akoi ani je ko ani thong ko edi two halves haiba tare ko tanghai ani harage high amasung low art haibas high haraga na akoi classical matam gi ko akoi Shakespeare oi gumba the ancient Greeks the Romans ko tu ma me loroji low hierarchy na ku popular literature ji ju part ama ne loroji ko ana ani ji ki marakta dichotomic relationship ma opposite ki relationship ma ko ju ko ni study to ngame masin hiding is kari no haiba ka ta popular literature hierarchy di ekoina yamna anemba thaki ta lobi ba ko yamna hantaba thaki ta lobi ba aduga mayamna parabadina literature amasung academia haiba se akoi ki yamna outdated oiba concept ama le ko haibadi for the elite section of society na khana bam le badi wakalo bam le me ko haibadi university amasung college education phangba mi khitangi mi adugi kangu do ko adugi dangi ni akoi classical literature je kaina ka akoi matam adugi haibata ko mawang nei da le ba akoi critics na kanaram ba adugi opposite ne popular jina amu akoi maming do like the name suggests popular hairagadi yamna khangbi ba yamna pambi ba ko mayamne appreciate to biba madum higher to higher ko aduna popular literature ga classical literature ga je high amasung low art ne lumnaram ko madum introduction ko begin by understanding features of popular literature like its place among popular culture and entertainment industry importance of genres and role of audience participation aduna nasigi lecture je ko koi academic amasung critical approaches ko popular literature je kamaina hogani haba kanda features kari features popular literature de yauriba kari kamaina mo differentiate to we ko aduga kamaina mo khenaba to classical literature ga mo kari ki khenai karam jaga khenai ko ade karam bana hena value lay karam bana hena popular oy karam ban hena appreciate to biko ha do me am to ki throughout history ko ahum am lai ko the importance of genres and role of audience participation you can talk yaw ngam ge do it will elucidate literary approaches I believe the Frankfurt School like Frankfurt School of Thought habitat critical approach habitat structuralism pusulapia Marxism pusulapia amasung postmodernism among others auna akuina nasigi lectures da popular literature through the lens of habitat Frankfurt School buharo structuralism buharo Marxism buharo amasung postmodernism ko kara mingoina palabda habitat ko mayam jigi through the akuina popular literature study to turin it will trace journey that popular literature has undergone as a body of writing and how its critical study has become more nuanced. Oh, now, popular literature ki journey ko, wiki horak pada moise yamna singthan bidaba haibetare ko, yamna ane ba thakta mamba, ode hujipudi popular literature ki role je yamna important wore ko, we academia da critical analysis da, masum critical study da yamna seasonare ko. Aduna moigi studies je hanna horak pada di yamna kahetare low art ko haibadi value yam later bita ta kalamba adubu hujikti yam nuance haragadi yam ira line explain to we are the ko haibadi magi magun nama jana se ko aga haibadi ko we friends haragada ko magi magun nama chen adu jo study to ho ko it will look at how we have moved from a time when critical approaches denounced popular literature as an escapist from of writing to contemporary realm when popular culture seems to have engulfed all other forms of knowledge production within its embrace aduna karino haiba kanda sikui to duise critical approaches na matam mamada popular literature jibu yamna escapist form of writing da ekoi gi hana nanthok na ba haiba tare in a negative sense ani ko negative connotation na piraga moise low art low brow haiba to low brow literature ne na khanara maka moina kahetare wi classical gi opposite ne na loramba adubu hujikti popular literature haraka loina ma jaga me ama encompass hagadi khupsan ba natraga mana pushan ba magi umbrella gi makha da loin pusla panga me ba habidi popular literature gi impact haba tare aduki matik chawre matam amada di muize discard toramba matam amada di muize low quality ne kaina da koi khanaram ba hujum matam mai khan bi atre ba maduni ko haning is important issues in popular literature the important issues no have the according to Raymond Williams popular derives from Latin popularis which means belonging to people and Raymond Williams have famous critic amani literary critic amani man high popular have say Latin term popularis have on popularis have gonna carry have no belonging to the people have the mayam get the belong to have the mayam get the makta have the morning man high he writes it referred to a political system constituted or carried out by the whole people, but there was also the sense of law or base. Popular was been seen from the point of view of the people rather than from those seeking favor or power from them. Aduna popular haiba kanda mayamgi or majority gi haiba gi concept ma lere aduga popular haiba kanda law natraga base haraga di a example pot amada base variant ka haraga di quite the lowest variant ka haiba ko mai khan design gumba haiba kanda ko aduna popular haraga di adum negative connotation je wiki Latin term dagi hoga ko adum dai ye aduna popular haraga di mayam na appreciate to ba mayam I had the for the majority of the society haraga ko mayam na appreciate to ba however with the law natraga base ki quality and the change ko adu ko popular ne lower habidi popularis hariba legend terms ko Williams identifies two characteristic traits ko makunani mana identify to it is considered as an inferior kind of work or work deliberately setting out to win favor like popular entertainment now popular literature haiba kanda Raymond Williams na haisa khara inferior haragadi lower quality haiba tare na aduga mayam ki majority dubu enjoy to na ba majority ki approval fund ba haiba tare ko irak style of writing ne haibadi classical natraga high brow or high class writing the for certain section of society the educated hierarchy the educated or the high class society even popular hierarchy educated majority of the people are not educated were not educated ko hire gene ko aduna majority du gi irak panina moje khara inferior kind of work ko magunda mo quality gi matung ni ko kanda aduga moje majority of the people or the larger section of the society hire gene ko madu gi da I pen low. It is a form of literature that is well liked by many people. The majority na yam na pam na ba adu na popular hai word se jing matam na mi ma popular oi hire ga di na tra me am na pam nei me am na appreciate the way me am na singtha bi de ka ga hai di pam di mo. This definition is helpful since it points towards several issues which have evolved into major debates in critical readings of popular literature. Adu na masigi definition jina kai da kana ga ba kana issues kar le aduna akhoi popular literature have say kamaina define tobani maji kamaina magi magi genre je kadai da happy agni ko aduga maji karamba space occupy towi akhoi academia da kaida haina akhoi yeng pakanda ko masi je akhoi critical readings kuma to pakanda sigi kaida definition je mayam na pamba hari je well liked by many people hari je ko siju achoba role ama lawdu ni akhoi popular literature define to pakanda natraga popular literature explain to pakanda madam. Popular literature as part of entertainment industry. Popular literature being understood as part of larger entertainment industry which exists in form of marketplace regulated by forces of demand and supply. Now, akoigi commercialization hierarchy or commercialism hierarchy demand and supply hierarchy. Yamna demand hierarchy, yamna supply hierarchy. Popular will be kingali kotoba. It can be art OBI, it can be any form of entertainment. Now, akoigi the namu literature ki matang na pusala punina. Akoigi novels OBI ko, stories OBI, writers OBI ko. Works of popular fiction classified as bestsellers and critics have repeatedly argued that their aesthetics are governed by commercial forces. Oh no, popular literature da di akoigi example am pirage. Like anoba ma pongba kanda akoigi selling point ama harage bujig matam da harage ko. Novel gumba kari gumba ma mayam da khangan ge haragadi bujiki novel je magi tagline hai batare New York Times bestsellers list kind of like adu me adu na akoini sum notice to bakanda ko reader amo ina notice to bakanda novel anobo ko almost every second novel hire again ko New York Times bestsellers list the number 1 seller hai na tum tagline am thing ne ko sticker am hai batare masigi je in the beginning hai batare akoina yamna value line program bani adubu nowadays every second novel have a time ko we novel kudim ayamba majority of the novel ko New York Times bestsellers list adum yawin to kale aduna madudagi akoina New York Times ga bestseller ko kai je value pra 100 en lo budi ko adubu sugum je koigi tagline jina popular literature gi define to ba magun na bani na lo bi maduni ko Dominic Strinati says that industrialization and commercialization have had significant influence over works of popular literature. This makes us wonder if the criteria of profitability and marketability takes precedence over quality, artistry, integrity, and intellectual challenge. Aduna, hojik matam dadi matam amada akoigi classical writings ningje mogi magunje academia da amasung mogi writing quality to the defined term but hojik matam dadi bestseller have to say quality am later ko just being honest ko we like kara have the akoigi no izu paramani Twilight series ko they the 50 Shades of Grey bu haro example ni ko suguma me amse magi quality ti yam name hai bi writing quality ko plot construction bu ro ko ni paraga di ni ramani adubu moise popular web ni na readers me am yam na they are considered to be best sellers haraga ni ko aduna hujik matam dadi lyric amaze best seller oi ba lyric amaze popular oi ba hai se magi readership or magi audience do not define to ko matam amadana quality artistry integrity amasung intellectual challenge oram ko hojikti madugi parameters sing je kaya popular oi so oi have din te ko writers sing above Booker Prize ko winner ko oi gadi yamna monitor ko novel sing do magun yam de ko daga tai ko best novel ko oi do aduna tragazu equigi quality de lectragazu famous over author amana or mayamna kaitare word of mouth no boiro amana boiro we sigi like sing wai ni pau ko to ko gidi adum commercialization gi matam ni na like ama best seller over kai chu sing matam di a diamond doesn't kai do na oire ko madum popular literature as genre fiction ko Genre fiction refers to works of literature written with intent of conforming to norms of a particular kind of writing. Genre fiction have karino have kanda literature ki works singni moje conform to bahar kadi chunan ba have tare ko norms har kana rules kuma have ni ko particular kind of writing ka chana han have tare have sigi parameters sigi rules sigi follow to bodam ni ka har ka du thajuna ba to ko du gi maung gi ra ko science fiction, detective thrillers, and romance novels are considered prime examples of genre fiction. On the science fiction, like novel, detective thriller, which is genre fiction ki example in Lobia. Ken Gelder, critic classifies popular fiction as genre fiction and says that generic identities determine not just what is inside the actual novel, but who publishes it, how and through what ventures it is marketed, who consumes and evaluates it, and how it is done. Genre, popular fiction, the genre fiction, or you say, kamaina identify to have a kanda, kaina determine to have a kanda. Actual novel to the yawi to, madu danda tip. Kanana published to buno, how and through what ventures it is marketed, kamaina market to buno, the commercialization gi matam na haiba tare ko na marketing is important way. Aduga kanana consume to buno, haiba di end goal and readership haiba tare ko kanana pabno. Evaluate kanana and how this is done. Kamay to si miyam je step by step kamay to important factors in here. This overdetermination by traditional markers of genre have led to leveling of popular literature as formulaic. I believe the idea that all popular fiction follows same old repetitive narrative logic and lacks creative vigor or originality. Si jo adum chumme haibagi supporting arguments miyam. Example am pike late 2010s again, and even now 2020s, early 2020s again. So the entertainment media, the novels that adapt to young adult habitat, young adult YA novels, me Malay, Divergent series kind of believe in the call. It's a pare, the Maze Runner, Hunger Games example niko moi myam je dystopian society gumbada loina based over repetitive oiba habitat ko they a young teenage hero character mo oiba khotpa on young adults in the aim to ni na habitat ko they nahas in the aim to ni na ona moi ki plot sing je yamna hoi even though the worlds are different moi the repetitive oiba quality ma chain they have the lang kani chele ba aduna moi je creative vigor or originality what prohibitive what all are based on dystopian societies all are about struggling to survive god society to survive don't know one about the protagonist hydra we characters in the nahas mo iba do na manar ma apin ubo phang hewan chizu chum me but on a formulaic way have so that is also a good critical point to discuss about what do you want rooted in time and place. The idea of popular is firmly rooted in a particular spatial and temporal realm. What counts as popular today might not have the same valence a few decades from now. Yes, and this is the popular literature definition satisfied of the atopa matamam the popular literature only have a guarantee like critics have argued that popular fiction lacks longevity. It does not survive test of time. Popular literature ki critics in the longevity or permanence quality change in a classical text transcends time and space and gives new meaning to a new generation of readers. And the point is that Greek writers sing tragedians or the English literature the Shakespeare Chaucer relevant example in the William Shakespeare Macbeth ambition Othello jealousy Hamlet procrastination meaning generation after generation enjoy to be proof classical text quality to permanency quality se popular literature that the critics claim to instead of seeing popular literature's lack of longevity as weakness, certain critics now understand it as its strength. Since these texts are rooted in a particular time and space, they are able to capture our society's socio-cultural anxieties or as Clive Bloom puts it, they become the barometer of contemporary imagination. The readership plays a huge role in determining the popularity of a text. Aduna critics karana mo hai ko popular literature ki supporters have tare matam amada fix oiba particular time amda amsung particular space and the fix oiba sa weakness not in the logo suya moina matam do fix to na matam dugi mirror image hai tare ko society dugi socio cultural anxiety society problems issues whatever may be the case madu dubu fazana capture to bungam na pina logo tare yanda ko haibadi classical budi thousands of years ago irambi hundreds of years ago irambi using matam relevant way in low that is considered to be a good quality popular literature na matam dugi time matam dugi space dang the focus to happen na matam dugi society do study to bakanda society dugi socio cultural anxieties ko muda ko na research to bakanda pa bakanda yamna fazana clear picture ma ko the provide to ngam me madoni ko next slide next ko role of audience or readership. Popular fiction marked by a significant involvement of readers not simply as consumers but also as producers and creators. The creation of fandoms or groups of fans who are devoted consumers of certain genres or authors leads to certain important changes in the production and distribution of popular literature. Now, popular literature the readers sing the role the classical being of popular literature significant involvement na fandom gumba kai gumba hojing batam ko author amagi fans singi ko culture sakali auna important changes production gumba distribution gumba da important changes ama apune thing da phange haibadi apui writers na semakpa irakpa creator ko world do readership na impact ko ngam hawan maduni ba as Ken Gelder writes popular fiction has fans readerships which live through their genres inhabiting them and claiming them. This aspect saves our understanding of this literature as a mass-mediated form, one which is equally influenced by the forces of the market and the demands of their devoted fandom. Aduna, sigi popular literature se kuigi garin influence to we market ki forces is influence to we audagi hendokna mogi devoted fandom na pam to adugi accordingly right to the kata example in a harage Arthur Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes create over Sherlock Holmes ki writer over amusung Agatha Christie hoise moin irakpa kanda moina moigi character sing do kill off to lushan bahai bitare ko moigi journey do lushan to kanda readership tuna moigi reader sing moigi fans sing tuna asawo myam ulakpadagi moju pilot tabadagi character sing do amuk halalak yawe adumaina popular literature the readership ki role the kimtik chawe aduna moigi role of audience amasung leadership se popular literature dan hina chawi compared to classical literature having more because akoigi moigi claim to bukanda moigi fandom na claim to bukanda author do not follow to government except to government theories of the culture industry. Most traditional readings of popular culture have understood it as inferior degraded category which is capable of harming the intellectual capacity of people. Traditional critics sing habitare or traditional reading to the popular culture je inferior oiba andaba thak oiba degraded oiba category ni the intellectual capacity pariba mi sing the intellectual capacity to degrade to bada amasung andan bada asobu role am lowe na lowe yan ko the earliest of these readings was done by Matthew Arnold Matthew Arnold haragadi au critic amani ko ma poet so ibani aduga magi touchstone method kai ko taramani who set up the binary of the popular and culture in his book titled Culture and Anarchy. Culture and Anarchy. Hariba, like Sisinamana popular culture ki difference so Patanamana according to him, culture, which included writings of canonical authors like Milton, John Milton, William Shakespeare, could educate and enlighten the masses, while popular fiction, written for mass consumption, was responsible for England's social decay. Matthew Arnold gi mot magi opinion have it culture haragana karino canonical authors in writing sing ne ko mana awang ba thap ta tham saba haiba tare ko John Milton hoy William Shakespeare hoy awna moidi masses pu praja mayam jibu educate to bungami enlighten to bungami ngan tare ko adubu popular literature na di mayam gi damakta mass consumption gi damakta sem popular literature na di amu England gi social decay andarak pa society gi quality handarak pa magun handarak pa gi achauba maram amani na mana claim to madu This interpretation of popular literature as a low form of art continued well into the middle of the 20th century and culminated in the Frankfurt School's theories about the culture industry. Aduna sumaina critic aphaw sing ni iram panina sigi popular literature have say karamba meeting di engani ko kani habu kanda adum negative oina ko yamna antavata ki quality ki oina sumiyang panina ko low form of art in the lori aduga 20th century ki middle da I believe 20th century 1950s haragene ko adai bukta dum sigi wakalon je home de bidum la ko adubu Frankfurt School gi theories about the culture industry la de gi kitang che chung la ko I believe keda je batang tang la ko among popular literature je accept of gi chang hingal ko I believe ko adu gi impact on la ko nothing is la yin ko The Frankfurt Institute for Social Research founded in 1923 by Theodor Adorno, Max Horkheimer and Herbert Marcuse. Marcuse was born in Berlin, Berlin-Napocni, studied at Humboldt University of Berlin, and then at Freiburg, where he received his PhD. Auna sidamoi Frankfurt Institute ki members sing niko, when founders sing have tare kanakano, Theodor Adorno lere, Max Horkheimer lere, amasung Herbert Marcuse lere ko. Auna Marcuse PhD ke ka for Freiburg to kaida panguni ko. One of the major ideological focuses of Frankfurt School was the critique of Enlightenment, an intellectual movement of the late 17th and 18th century, which sought to comprehend the world through human reason and rationality. Now, moigi critics se kari to gaya kanda Enlightenment movement do matangda akoigi human reason amasung human rationality sin naraga universe amasung world jibu understand to no na je Enlightenment movement ko iko koi sima sikaram kanda rokibun ha kanda late 17 ibdi akoigi 1600s ko 1670s 80s 90s sarage amasung 18th century the lak Intellectuals of Frankfurt School believed that the Enlightenment movement had lost sight of its goals. Auna, Frankfurt School gi founders sing amasung critics sing nako Enlightenment movement je mogi goals sing do adagi thaidokhre na lawe ko. Adorno believed that Enlightenment impedes the development of autonomous independent individuals who judge and decide consciously for themselves. Adorno gi moti matungina Enlightenment ki movement jina impede to haragadi athing bathamba mapi ba haiba tare on autonomous independent individuals ko masa gi wakalon masa gi ideology create to bakanda masa na judge to no bona bakanda apidi sigi formula je follow to gudabuni sigi rule je follow to gudabuni haibagi wakalon on porapani na autonomous independent individuals sing je mogi development impede to wena I don't know na claim to we ko Since artwork are governed by logic of profitability, they become repetitive and formulaic. Now, the artwork say, "Akogi profit nom dala na commercializing ki matang dala na moise amaga matau tam na ba." I believe creativity ki chang jam handare. Sigi art se sumani ye agadi yam na profitable hoy bani. I believe wakalo nom la agadi oh I ju mani ye ke I ju mani follow to ge I ju gi style do matau tam ge I believe wakalo nom la aduna Masamagi originality, Masamagi creativity ki chang ke to handara ko tab ne profitability the mind onjala kandade. Adorno believed that the popular culture further legitimizes socio-cultural status quo and renders masses powerless. Na masses in the powerless oriented low Adorno ko Manahai he writes, the power of the culture industry's ideology is such that conformity has replaced consciousness. Na culture industry ki ideology je yamna asoi balambi yamada sathare kaino am kanda conformity na consciousness को replace to grab conformity haragadi rules in follow to ba rules in dugi boundary manung da chatpa aduna moi consciousness haragada masagi wakalum sabungam ja masi jibu rule follow to raga chalinge da madugi masagi wakalum do to pa ngam handre habi mo ngai ko habidi originality amasung creativity je heart laziness conformity je follow to ngai Frankfurt School's ideas overlook heterogeneity of popular culture and the needs and desires of its audience or readers. It assumes that all forms of popular culture are similar and therefore regressive in nature. On a popular culture, je regressive way loyo ko. Habidi maning kala tapne loyo ko. Sakot pane logde. Sakot pane loyo. Adorno considers that all audiences or products of popular culture have little or no agency at all. This stance of complete passivity of reader has received its fair share of criticism. Dominic Strinati argues that audiences are more active and discriminating about what they consume. On the current Adorno in high Frankfurt School on high. Popular literature yak kanda. Amaga manabnina. Amaga conform to nabnina. Originality ki changdo am handare na low. And the regressive way in low. Adubu Dominic Strinati nung high magi mo no kayo no kanda audience in namu active way bihali. Ko na mo na judge to ba ko pa have tare mo na consume to riba text po literature po adubu just to mo na yamna actively just to na mo na quality to hena maintain to way na low. I mean some sign mo no criticism. One of the most relevant criticisms of theory of culture industry comes from Walter Benjamin. Walter Benjamin, associate of Frankfurt School and friends with thinkers such as Bertolt Brecht. In article titled "The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction," Benjamin writes about revolutionary potential of film medium. Walter Benjamin namo film medium he argues that technological reproduction has democratized a work of art by challenging what he terms its aura. Traditionally, when a work of art was rooted in a singular time and space, it acquired a sense of exclusivity and originality. For instance, there was only one original painting or one original sculpture displayed at a museum or an art exhibition. However, as copies of such works are made possible, there is a tremendous shattering of tradition. ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯥꯔꯠꯋꯥꯔꯛꯀꯨꯝꯕꯕꯨ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯣ ꯄꯦꯟꯇꯤꯡꯒꯨꯝꯕꯒꯤꯕꯨ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯣ ꯃꯣꯏꯗ ꯑꯃꯇꯪ ꯂꯩꯔꯛꯄ ꯀꯥꯟꯗꯗꯤ ꯃꯗꯨꯗ exclusivity amasung originality ki magun ama lay haibadi for example Mona Lisa is only one Mona Lisa ni the Starry Night has a Vincent van Gogh ki only one ni auna copy singba work singi copy sing yakpa kandadi tradition dugi akaibada tradition haibam leram dugi thukai bam lai haiba one ko auna copies kumba kai gumbi rakpa kandadi mogi tradition do thukai le structuralist reading of popular literature. Structuralism, an intellectual movement which began in France in the 1950s and studies underlying organization of text. So text no be underlying text. Every text are surface reading the subtext is part of the structuralist ki quality. Peter Berry writes that structuralist approach is marked by a constant movement away from the interpretation of the individual literary work and parallel drive towards understanding the larger abstract structures which contain them. Constant movement away. Interpretation of the individual literary work. Individual literary work to be explained to the parallel drive. Larger abstract structures to understand content understand structuralism approach. Since popular texts follow formulaic plot, they made for ideal objects of structuralist analysis. Popular texts in the Masagi inside slide formulaic plot, formulaic device parameters follow to structural analysis to kanda yamna ideal oiba subject matter way Umberto Eco's study of James Bond novels is one of the most iconic structuralist exploration of popular text. Umberto Eco haraga aikogi the name of the rose ki ba the Foucault's pendulum gi pariko. He breaks down these novels into their constituent elements and demonstrates the rules through which they unfold. Now, James Bond novels in the curricular rules follow the have the parameters in the yes, James Bond novels maybe 20 and above. I'm not sure. Adubu loinamak formulaic way the man doesn't break down to it. This text version is being on constant dialogue with social, cultural, and political ideologies, paving the way for a sociological, critical approach. Now, sociological side to give more popular literature to understand or study Sociological reading of popular literature. Popular texts are studied in conjunction with social, cultural, political, and economic determinants. It looks for sites where certain ideologies are explored in detail, reiterated, or challenged. Tony Bennett argues that Marxist critics have been largely reluctant to perform critical analysis of popular texts. Tony Bennett argument Marxist critics moidi critical analysis popular literature or popular text kumbagi critical analysis to boda moidi kya tawing de ba replicating value judgment conferred on popular literature as being low form of art ana moina ju adum marxist sing ju popular literature di low form of art ni ko haibde low form ko dai di khara awang ba thak tham da haibda tare ko mane lower members Frederick Jameson performed comprehensive study of science fiction, wherein he discusses the potential of the genre to conjure empirically grounded alternatives to existing realities. The rise of science fiction responds to a specific cultural and economic crisis and simultaneously facilitates possibility of a new world order within a capitalist order. Ona Frederick Jameson huina science fiction study to kana Marxist side gi yeng kana ko. Koigi specific cultural and economic crisis aduga kari facilitate to we have a possibility of a new world order ama sagatnabagi possibility mo porak to moina adu understand to ngame ko capitalist order to taraga ano new world order ma semko as capitalism produces struggle for resources this poses populist resorts to crime to fight for some semblance of equality ona capitalism that the haves amasung have not sabagi concept amale ko resources ki matanga those who control the resources and those who want the resources having na akoigi crime gumba kai gumba the resort or pose akoigi equality pambagi semblance of equality hari resemblance hari ko magi structure mani na lower ko very famous this was further facilitated by the movement of cultural materialism which borrows its core ideology from the British left-wing thinker Raymond Williams Critics from this school believe that culture is inclusive of all forms of art, including popular texts, television shows, music, etc. Auna moina mu culture je loinamak punjali, loinamak art ki makan myaun leka, loinamak punjali is leka, popular text poro, television shows poro, music poro. Unlike earlier thinkers like Matthew Arnold and F.R. Davis, who believed that culture was a sanctified realm which could be occupied only by canonical authors, cultural materialists argue for a more inclusive understanding of the term. Alna, Matthew Arnold gumba among the zo koi side am thing nagre F.R. Davis gumba na hazari jina culture ji yamna sheng na thamgado ba sanctified when hai tare ko yamna awang ba thak thamgado ba realm amani canonical authors sing da changhan biya ba jaga ma example koi ki space ama moi da provide toraga koi ki canonical authors example in higher da koi ki sai chupan ke ko Milton Boiro John Milton Boiro or William Shakespeare Boiro moi gumba dang na kan gada space ni na thanaram ba to cultural materialist in amu adugi opposite haiba tare ko na kar inclusive hoiba hena join to humbi aba haibagi understanding of the term sigi se akogi kai hai tare cultural materialist in the thousand je canonical jaga to popular chakhan bi haibagi mo thasi the materialist part of their approach implies that culture cannot transcend the material forces and relations of production any cultural form of production must be studied in conjunction with the material social, cultural, economic conditions under which it was produced and which it represents. Oh, no. Production it can be about novel or literature study in conjunction side by side. Oh, no. Material, social, cultural, economic condition study study if there is one movement which redefined popular literature and popular culture and open up new avenues for their critical study, it has to be postmodernism. On the postmodernism, the popular literature is redefined to the role of popular culture, another avenue, have it in Lambi, have a critical study the Lambi and Nova, Yapiram, Zekaramba, movement of Gehabakanda, postmodernism. This movement rose to prominence towards the latter half of the 20th century, latter half of the 20th century, 1950s, after the period of high modernism in literature. High modernism, postmodernism. One of the central tenets of postmodernism thought was a militant rejection of the division between high and popular art. Postmodernism ki tenets or tenets rule foundational rule ignore to be other rule rejection reject we have high popular art say postmodernism reject militant rejection to the utmost degree Objects of Delhi used treated as art pieces when Andy Warhol, an American artist, film director, producer, and a leading figure in the visual arts movement known as the pop art famously created an exhibit of Campbell's soup cans. Campbell's soup can have a soup hapnaba can patra haitare ko the American society na yam tamda yam popular amba magi tomato soup adugi soup ko yam ma to ni mana adugi icham chamba daily use sin no yamna basic oiba item amana haibitare ko mana art piece ne sin ne Andy Warhol and Andy Warhol I say postmodernism ko artist amada American artist amada yamna popular oiba 1960s 70s ta haibitare ko yamna relevant oiba hujing matam dun relevant oi ko na magi artworks king je yamna popular oi aduna mana adugumba yamna common oiba everyday item mo sinaraga mana artwork win to be oi ko aduna sidi marks da sige item de example in harabada soup kenze art ki object ama when a sin ya ya there the postmodernism that we should like there in like habidi when this can be considered as art this cannot be considered as art habidi with the differentiation like they have on na Andy Warhol wina soup can do sin araga art no to go Linda Hutcheon argues that postmodernism is both academic and popular elitist and accessible na Linda Hutcheon ko ji jo critic amani feminist critic amani ko manong hai postmodernism se academic oi popular jo oi elitist oi accessible jo anima ko habidi one or the alternative both have to be minds ko habidi high the low ga superior in magi definition adu magi divide to like ko postmodernism Postmodernism amounted to rejection of established literary genres and styles of writing. John Francis Lyotard defined it as incredulity towards meta-narratives, a distrust of any overarching, totalizing stories which explain any aspect of external reality. Postmodernism embraced fragmentation, irony, paradox, and favored new forms of expression. Modernism amasung structuralism gumbagi mogi structure amale ramdo hanagi thugaibe yadaba or hanagi masini haibadaroga kuigi yamna systematic model ramdo madubu challenge to ba madubu face to postmodernism gi factor amale ba this meant that popular literature was to be considered as much as part of authentic literature as any other form of writing na postmodernist na popular literature je authentic literature amani classical literature compared to BI habidi classical literature has an important idea even though we mamanda leramba we traditional critics na traditional writers na traditional academicians na haramba sing to moina mo reject to ko na mon hari je popular literature je authentic literature makalamani it can be compared to classical literature also samane ko mai value Lev Grossman declared that genre fiction is a technology that will disrupt the literary novel as we know it. In other words, my handing is a kind of the date of the hour was to redefine existing literary forms and welcome experimentation of different kinds. So, experimentation, makan consider ano ba thought, ano ba creative or wakalon sinaraga, ano ba literature po art po same is important or and popular literature or genre fiction was seen as a tool that can bring about this revolution in literature and literary criticism as well. Aduna madugi ano ba changes me ando program na ba ona bada popular literature or genre fiction na achopo to gama logo doing have say Lev Grossman hoina critic hoina ko thazaram Gender and popular literature. Popular literature plays an important role in the creation of the dominant gender discourse within a society. Na society ama the dominant genders na karamba no habigi discourse ama habigi wakalon gumba kai gumba koi factors of mo ba Feminist theory has often articulated its discontent with the relative lack of representation of women and female experiences in popular literature. Now, feminist theory singna or feminist theory na or feminist theorists na have that ko. When the pain the when discontent me amdu di mo na do kudo e ko. Now, the piece singi representation, the piece na traga the piece singi experiencing representation je ko gi popular literature da one level ko. Na mo pain the even when women find representation, it is often in the form of hackneyed stereotypes which propagate patriarchal mindset of society. The piecing role, the yawa thing, the role, the stereotypical way. I mean, the has they belong in the kitchen, for example. The is a housewife or the damsel in distress. The pana can the sigi adumina the piecing join represent the way. I be the moinaga savior way, moinaga wari to hero way. Protagonist ko say popular literature. Feminist theories contend that women are portrayed as objects of sexual attention or as performers of domestic labor. Example in higher Ian Fleming की James Bond की novel series का है मधुदा नुपी सिंह starting with their names ममिंग तगी हो रहा है उसी कोई ना postmodernist study में तो बकान दा notice तो बनी नुपी सिंह तो याम objectify तो है नुपी सिंह जे याम ना sexualized तो है बता रहे को ना sexual attention को ना कोई James Bond ना in every novel or in every film है बता रहे को नुपी अनो माना का sexually conquered over higher again. I think you want to scenario, but even though I don't want to use it, I do to say when Ireland over hangyo. I want to moigi role je, nupa ki pleasure ki object amo in a role in the upa ko say popular literature of Ireland over hangyo. I want to feminist theories or the feminist theory na moigi pen daba, we popular literature moigi pen daba no pondo ko tapo. Even as golden age of detective fiction was dominated largely by female writers such as Agatha Christie and Dorothy Sayers, critics argued that the visibility and representation of female characters remained rather skewed. Why golden age of detective fiction had Agatha Christie Sherlock Holmes Dorothy Sayers represent female characters visibility and representation yamna popular winner represent top there skewed way habity mogi role je yamna pick na yaw le the spy thriller is known for sexualizing female body and making it available to the male gaze and jita hype duni ka James Bond example in har James Bond ki thriller ko kai ka James Bond ki novel or movie or popular literature har in the novels bi yeng bakanda the piece in magi secretarial role ko har ke James Bond na mana adventure daga chalaga nupidana magi supporting character amoina danga yahon ba ko habi magi role ya na minimize to ko pa natraga ma sexual object oina ga study to ko sexual object oina ma ti yeng mo da akoi nupi singse akoi gi spy thriller da kai da ya to nu certain feminist critics have stressed need to use popular culture as a tool of resistance against dominant patriarchal order ona feminist critics in the popular culture is seen as pula when seen as dominant patriarchal order fight. Michelle Barrett asserts that feminists must attempt to influence mass media and reach a wider audience by creating a distinctly feminine mode of expression. Feminine mode of expression create a wider audience. Attention has shifted towards analyzing women's role as consumers or readers of a huge body of popular literature. Instead of being seen as passive consumers of patriarchal norms, women are understood as active readers capable of subversive alternative interpretation of text. Over the years, there has been a marked shift in the registers of representation of gender and sexuality in popular literature from all genres. It is now commonplace for women and female experiences to occupy center stage. Change sama lakudi the piecing role popular literature kaita hana early 20th century the piecing role je the pana conquered over or was they belong to the kitchen or in the kitchen habitat but my layer but adu wakalo home bi la na using matam dadi popular literature da the piecing na protagonist will be role the piecing na major role lo example in habit Hunger Games ironic the Divergent series kaita young adult kumba novel da the superhero comics kaita haida da popular culture in myam da the piecing role je automatic chong da koi expand tor ko mo angyo some of those go so quite important issues in popular literature Raymond Williams have the popularis I would say Latin company it belongs to the people that have it or well liked by many people in about my love to go to the popular literature key concepts and entertainment industry role so one of occupied the week on the bestseller commercial forces kumana have the number one bestseller ne kahara the popular literature important popular literature ne kahara long madu definition period the rooted in time and place right I believe sije positive one lobi ai negative one lobi classical gi works in the they are not rooted in time and place ko haibadi Shakespeare na 1600s 1500s si ramado is still relevant now because it would relevant lobi adubu popular literature di moi di time and place root to na magi positive side di yengba kandana matam dugi ko madu matam dugi society madu matam dugi economics factors me amai social cultural anxieties me ando fazna capture to bungami fazna occupy to bungami role of audience amasung leadership si achopul role ama play tore auna akhoi fandom gumba kai gumba gi concept am lak de gi ko akhoi author ni iba kanda they have to keep their fans in mind theories of culture industry de am yaure ko akhoi Matthew Arnold gi opinion pung do Matthew Arnold in high canonical authors sing jina moing da moing matau jina educate to ba enlighten the masses to ba aduga popular literature na popular fiction jina mu England gi decay gi dam kamara ma so moi kind of mana claim to ra ko have my opinion ko as a critic mo na the Frankfurt Institute of Social Research ko Frankfurt Society do mo gi opinion pung do the Walter Benjamin when my opinion pung do me ko the structural reading ama to kan da we understand to re sociological reading to re gender gi role ko have the piece gi role je akhoi popular literature and the piece gi role je akhoi gi yamna swept to the side again na mo domestic labor gumba kai gumba to ba or the objects of male attention gumba kai gumba mo hen do koina du ko pange ko ki popular literature adubu feminist critics sing feminist theorists sing na mo moina adu challenge sor ko gi di hujing matam dati ko gi napi sing ja mo center stage sa ba tare ko mai gi bo mo lor ko to ko pange na to ni as contemporary critical approaches have opened up new realms of study and analysis, popular literature has occupied a very significant position within the larger cultural realm. The cultural, the popular literature it is now seen as a body of writing which both shapes and responds to contemporary ideological beliefs about different issues like politics, gender, environment, etc. Popular literature ideological beliefs kumba kai kumba haibadi politics to ero gender kumba do ero environment kumba do ero moina choba role am lawe ko set to bada the digital turn in popular culture has also brought about massive changes in the constitution of popular culture which has now moved to digital platforms and publishing method publishing method tagi already digital platform da lakpa samna harabada ko like print to ko do kumba na factor to pa audio book kumba kai kumba haibin consequently, not only have the content and themes undergone a paradigm shift, but the forms of writing have also evolved as internet blogs and microfiction are now immensely popular among the masses. With internet blogs from the era of point. I believe like printed form the microblogs, microfiction, internet blogs So today we have analyzed academic and critical approaches to popular literature. Lectures next key unit 4 da akoina masigi blog se akoi losumba ngamani ko so masigi lecture da khang da ko to yaur gadi we will discuss that in the next class. I hope you all have a good evening.